Here's the scene. You, sitting at your gaming platform of choice, shout out to the Switch gang, playing vanilla city skylines, and your city looks like this. But you want it to look like this. Your city, their city. Your city, this city. And this city is jam-packed, full of beauty that's too intimidating for you to even begin. You find yourself not knowing where to start. And then you clicked this video. Hello world! Today I will give you the jumpstart you need to begin your path from mismatched cities to well-planned and properly detailed works of art, all in the vanilla game. Once you've seen these 5 things and you're comfortable with them, you'll be ready to move onwards and upwards, so I will be sure to point you in the right direction from there. Let's get you started. You are looking at the city of Lichens Ub Scribe, a city made for 2 purposes: functionality and to get the point of this video across. You will see that this is a pretty generic looking city. It's one that was put together, it functions, the city is growing, all the services are balanced as they should be. However, it's not exactly visually appealing. We are going to rebuild this city in 5 sweeping steps, and each step will add something new visually to the city. This is done all entirely in vanilla, no mods installed whatsoever. So let's get cracking with the road layout first. I've taken a screenshot of what this road layout looks like and what zoning I have put where so that I can reference and try to replicate the same essentials of this layout as we rebuild this city from scratch. Let's get to deleting some roads. We just deleted a lot of roads and we'll probably end up deleting some more, but let's unpause and watch the city disappear before our eyes. I have dezoned everything and we are left only with the service buildings where they used to be, and we'll probably have to move them around. Let's put these roads back in section by section, and we are going to start with this section here as it's probably the simplest, with it being a grid. That's right, even when you are doing a gridded area, you can still make the grid look planned, look beautiful, and generally more interesting. What I like to do when I'm doing a gridded area is use my road tool to measure how long the spaces that we're going. And when I'm using the vanilla game, I measure it by construction cost. So our cost here is $25.60. I'm going to divide it by 4 so that we can have a similar grid to what we had before, but now it's going to be even. $25.60 divided by 4 is 640. So I'm going to start up here and just go out to 640 just to mark that length, and then I will come down and make this the road this way and then delete that. It's just I'm only using this road to measure, and then I will do the same thing one more time, 640, and then if right, perfect, you can see my maths were correct. That's good because I used a calculator. We now have even spaced roads going this way. Let's do kind of the same thing and measure this. It's 1920, which when you divide it by 4 is 480. So I'm going to get this same grid in that we did before, and we left this section open, which I actually really liked. So let's get these roads in, and I rather like how that looks. I'll do the same down here, and done. I kept this section down here to have the 8 blocks in between, 4 to make zoning available up here, 4 for zoning available down here if we want to use it. And then what that left for these is 1,400 cost, which in half is 700, which is really difficult to get. To show you how I did it, I turned off most of my snapping. When you look closely, the line of this zoning square here is at 680, and the line of this zoning square down here is 720. So I put my road in between them in the middle as best I could and put it there for the 700. I like this a lot better than what it used to look like. Here's what this section looked like before the destruction, and here's a couple things that we are going to change. This road on the edge looks a little odd. We are going to tidy it up. Let's get rid of this skinny road on the outside because the connection from the thicker road to the skinny road just is weird. Let's do some more measuring. That's everyone's favorite thing to do, right? We're going to measure this road is 3,000 cost long. This road is 6,060 long. Why don't we tidy that up to be an even 6,000 long? Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna draw a road over here to come out from, and then I'm going to delete all of this, and then I'm gonna remeasure out 6,000. So this is 3,000 long. This is 6,000 long. Let's make this 4,500 long so that that angle just makes more sense. So that already looks a lot better. but I don't love these angles. They're a little whack. Let me show you how I do angled roads in vanilla. I delete usually 2 sections from each side. I will grab the road in question, and I prefer to use the free form road. I'll start somewhere along the line of the first road. I'm gonna say here-ish. I'll go until the game connects me or shows me that this road is nearby to snap to. So I'll click my second click on that snap. So there's my second click. And once you've done that second click, your mouse kind of snaps as you move along this first one. So I'm gonna count each snap. So watch, we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it took 5 kind of snaps or chunks or whatever to get to this second line. And then I'm going to move towards the second row and count to the same number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That looks like a much nicer curve. And once you complete the road on each side, it's a much more gradual and pleasant looking curve than what we had before. We're going to come down here and try to do the same thing. It's going to be a little bit trickier to get it to look, you know, perfect because this is a really sharp angle, but let's see what we can figure out. I'm just moving these buildings out of the way. Same thing, let's delete a couple chunks from each side and let's get out the freeform road. We'll start somewhere in this road, move to where it lines up with this road. This one's gonna be a bit tricky because it's gonna try to line up over here, but we can figure it out. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Great, so 11. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then fill it in with the straight roads from there, and I think that looks much better. This section over here had some roads that didn't quite go all the way to the end of the road on all sides. So we're gonna keep that up, but we're gonna make it a lot nicer by measuring the roads and doing some halves and thirds mathematically. I put this road right back where it was before because I can't move this symmetry without emptying it first, and that's a whole big thing. This section down here is going to be the easiest one. It had a road going horizontally that wanted to be halfway, but it wasn't. So let's actually measure it. 1600 in half is 800 right there. Perfect. So we'll use the road to measure again. And what I like to do when I'm doing a road that doesn't quite go all the way to the other side is I like to end it just where the zoning ends. And I'll do that up here as well so that it's consistent and it's an easy way to remember where you are ending your roads. There was also some vertical roads coming off of this one, and you can either go half on this road or half on this whole space. Let's go half on the whole space, which is going to be 700 again, so we're going to have to do that trick again. There's our 700, and once again I'm going to go to the end of where the zoning is, and I'm just going to redo this road. Great, I like how that looks. In this bottom right section, we had roads going horizontally and they tried to be in thirds, but they looked uneven. Editor Toadie here. I'm going to respect your time and not make you watch the rest of me doing all these roads the exact same way. I did a lot of measuring. I placed the roads on purpose. You can see it happening here. Let's carry on. Earlier, and there is these 4 sections recreated looking better using maths. I filled in these 2 areas using maths just like we did over here. Here is what they used to look like. Here's what they look like now. We obviously still have some work to do, right? I just want to demonstrate that here and here is a great opportunity to use the same kind of curved road that we did over here. So freeform road, let's do kind of a wide one. So I'm going to meet this line with my first click, and then I'm going to count them. It was 7, so I'm going to count 7. Perfect. And then I will connect the 2 ends using the straight road tool. And how much better does that look there? I'm going to do the same thing here. Here is the before and here's the after. Again, just looks so much better. Enough with the grids. Let's do something more wiggly wobbly, more fun. Let's look at how this area used to look and try to replicate it, but better. We need a circle in here. Let's do this. I'm going to measure what half of this is. It's 480, so we're going to make the radius of this circle 480 each way. So let's measure 480. There's where we're going to get to. That's what our circle would look like if it was a square. Now let's draw it as a circle. Because we have it already drawn as a square, this is going to be so easy. We're going to delete 1 section at a time so that we still have these markers to go from. We will use the freeform tool so that it makes the curve for us. And we're just going to do that each way. And there's our circle. Looks a little bit neater. From there, we have these 3 roads that we need to figure out. I know that that is the middle. Let's leave it there for now, but I think we're going to pull a trick from our sleeves here. For these ones, I think it's going to be okay to eyeball it. Let's just go out at our 90-degree angle, and we've got kind of that radial thing that we had before, but it looks a little bit more tidy. But I've got a cool idea here. I've been playing with the curved road tool, just kind of looking visually to see what I want. Let's put this road in. I'm still using the curved road tool this time. Then I'm going to extend these roads to reach it, which already looks pretty cool, but I don't want this connection so close there. So we're just going to delete that one. Do that same curve trick that we've done before, and that's how this is gonna stay. How did I accomplish this cool looking thing? I played around with it, which is what I encourage you to do too. Don't be afraid to get messy, make some mistakes, do some cool geometrical stuff. This section over here, we had just some cool wiggly wobbly roads, but they looked really messy. And they looked really messy because I took the curved road tool and I just kind of like did whatever. Let's do it, but not just doing whatever. We can start with the freeform road tool. It's my tool of preference here. And again, I'm gonna go from this middle node. And what I like about the freeform road tool is that it makes your curves nice kind of no matter what you do. And you just click once and follow the wiggle wobble. You can still make some things that look less than great using this tool. For example, if I clicked here, I don't like the way that curve looks, how the one side of it is longer than the other. So slow down, move your mouse around so that it looks generally even, kind of wherever you go with it, and do some wiggly wobblies. Let's go around this way, and that's a similar path to what we had before, but it looks a lot more neat. Now let's fill in the rest of it. It looks a lot less messy, right? When you're doing a road alongside a riverbank like this, or maybe it's a coastline of the sea or the ocean, the temptation is definitely there to follow the coastline exactly. If you end up doing that, don't plan to zone on the one side of it because you're gonna get really ugly stuff like this happening, which we will address in a later point, so stay tuned. But when you're making your plans, choose either to go right along the edge like we have down here and not do any zoning on the one side, or tuck your road in further away from the coastline, and that gives you opportunity to do zoning on it. So I'm going to redo that line the way that I would do it. There's how I would have done it. So I plan not to do any zoning along this front edge here, but we will have some housing zoned in here. Let me fill in this last area using the tricks that I've already shown you, and then we'll take a look. I have one last thing to talk about, and it is just the types of roads that we choose. Once you're far enough in the game that you have a whole bunch of money in the bank, or if you are playing with unlimited money, you have so many different road types to choose from, and you should use them. The key is not to just use the roads with trees everywhere. Use them where it makes sense, of course, but vary it up a little bit. For the sections coming from the interchanges, which we will touch on later, going into the city, I'm going to use the roads with grass. Then for this big main road, absolutely, let's get some trees in here. And again, the road leading up to the interchange, let's do roads with grass. What I tend to do with my 4-lane roads is generally make them all the roads with grass versus the trees, or maybe I would do the bicycle lanes if that makes sense for the city that I'm using. For this city, let's do the decorative grass for all of our 4-lane roads. If I was going to do a section with trees, it would be here on the outside, but then let's go back to the grass for the rest. Then going into the 2-lane roads, again, I find the trick is to switch it up a little between the roads with trees and roads with grass, or the bike lanes if that's what you're using in your city. For a gridded section like this, I would maybe do like all the vertical ones as the roads with trees, and then all the horizontal with the grass. For sections like this, maybe just do the roads with grass on this main road in the middle, and leave the other roads without grass or trees, again for the variety. And finally down here, I've used road types that are applicable to the area. So I've used the industry road types for down here as well as this area up here, and I've used dirt roads for this, and you'll find out why in a later step. Lastly, we have this road down here which just looks awful. What I'm going to do to make this look like it's more on purpose is I'm going to keep the road type the same, and I'm just going to elevate the road myself here to here so that it looks nicer. And then when I bring it back down to the land, That is a straight bridge, even across, and it has the two whooshies, which just looks so much more interesting than it did before. So let's transition between the old road layout and the new road layout. And you can see it generally looks tidier. When you zoom in, you see the trees and the grass road types, which I think look a heck of a lot better. And even just with playing around with the roads, we've improved how the city looks by a good margin. Next, let's talk about placing buildings and using your zoning tools on purpose. Let's move down here to my waste processing and my power. I just want to show you how kind of tidy I've made these buildings. So this guy is tucked right in here with these guys, and this area is filled out on purpose. So these solar towers are across from each other at the same levels. These three buildings are spaced evenly apart, and even with the power lines, if you are able to run them alongside a main road like this that you know that you won't be zoning, it's a great idea to do so. You'll notice that I've moved the water towers down here as well to keep them away from any pollution, and I thought this was a nice area to space them out as evenly as possible. The other ways that you can place buildings on purpose is like this. So this hospital fits in here perfectly, so why not put him there? The same thing goes with this cemetery. It fits within this space, and the more times that you can do that, the more it will look like that your city was planned and done on purpose. The other ways that you can show that you've really planned out your city is by making your parks make sense. So here we've got the Paradox Plaza, which is a very square asset, and if you were to put it in an area like this, even if you were to zone around here, which we will soon, this square plaza just doesn't make sense over here. I would be using the Paradox Plaza more in a gridded area like this. Maybe we will put him over there. And in these wibbly wobbly roads, as I have been calling them, I would use something a little bit more natural, like this small playground. If I put it there and then zone around here with some residential, that just makes more sense with the neighborhood around it. I also recommend grouping like buildings together. So we have the police headquarters and the fire station over here. I like to use these two assets nearby each other because it looks good and it makes sense. A school and a park side by side, of course. After placing all of our service buildings and parks back in a way that makes sense and looks good, the next thing that we need to do is zone back in all of our buildings. Let's start with this area over here. And this is what the zoning looked like before. Everything was filled in, using the space to its fullest capacity. And here's how we're going to change that up a little. What you might be often tempted to do is just fill in all of this and use it all, right? And that makes a lot of sense if you're looking to get the most out of your space for the function of the game. Sometimes it can be more about form than function. Let's delete a lot of this and see how we can change it up to look a little bit better. If you just leave a little bit of space between some of the buildings and maybe zone some different sizes to get some variety, you hopefully will notice quite a bit of difference in how you feel your city looks. So I'm zoning these in to look like this, and let's leave that at that for now. Down here, I'm going to do the same kind of thing, maybe along this main road. Everything is packed tightly, makes sense. But on these side roads, maybe the people here are a little better off. They get a little bit more yard space, acreage with their land. We'll give them all the 4x4s, and I'm just leaving 2 or 3 squares in between each of them. Because we have buildings that produce pollution down here, I'm going to switch over to doing commercial buildings, but there is nothing stopping me from doing the exact same thing. Putting in a variety of sizes, leaving some spaces, 1, 2, 3 spaces between them, really can help your area look less like you just went like this. Leaving these spaces like this will help with your traffic as well. In here, I'm going to zone a couple industry buildings as well to help with our needs that I'm sure we will have. But again, I'm spacing them out both to help with traffic and to give us a little bit of variety in our buildings. Finally, I will give these industry workers some shops to go and catch a bite on their lunch breaks. With this high density housing area that we had up here, I'm going to leave the outsides all filled in. With high density, to me, it does make a lot of sense to leave them just kind of side by side, jam-packed. What I will do though is I will switch up the sizes that I'm zoning so that again there's a little bit more variety with the buildings. Once they all reach level 4, they can tend to look the same. in this last corner up here is where the real magic is going to happen, guys. What we're going to do is zone our offices in first because they will help block the noise of the commercial. And you'll notice I'm doing the same thing. I'm kind of alternating between 3 and 4 squares for the offices. Great, so the noise pollution is pretty well covered. What we had in the rest of this area was high density and low density commercial, but what it looked like was basically this, low density and high density. And that's pretty boring. What I love to do with commercial is I love just to mix up the high and low density. So let me do a little bit of this. I'll put in my low density first, and again, kind of mix up the amount that I'm zoning between 3 and 4 deep, I guess. And then from here, I will take the high density, and I could just do this and cover it all with the high density, but I'm gonna do kind of the same thing and go between the different sizes. So we'll get some 3s, some 4s, and so on. And that will be a beautiful shopping district with a lot of variety in it. What you can do if you're doing perhaps a much larger shopping district is even throw some office buildings in here among the commercial to really break it up. All right, we have demand, we have power. Let's unpause the simulation and see what zones in here. Look at everybody moving in, all moving in down here. And taking a look at the city, I mean, everything's probably still level 1, right? But look how much more well-planned this looks, more spaced out, more breathable, more variety in the building types, especially when you come over here. And that's what I like to see. It looks like these guys actually have a yard. The other big place that I would suggest not just immediately zoning everything is these wiggly wobbly roads. Let's look at how this was zoned before, and it's just jam-packed. It's just everything is loaded in as much as possible. That's not how people who live out here in the country would live. They would live a little bit apart, right? So I'm just going to zone kind of every other one, every 2, every little bit. And yes, that will not fill as much of the demand as before, but it will look really nice. Maybe every now and then someone does live right side by side. It's nice to have a variety and a selection for our citizens coming in. Down here on the water, I can see more people living more closely together because I wanted to take advantage of the water nearby. So these ones I will put in a little bit more tightly and then start to space them out as we move further away from the water. 2 last things. I think it's important to know when to stop zoning as well. I don't want houses up here because I don't think people would live along a road like this that has the water towers behind them. I think there would probably be more nature over here. And then over here by the school, I'm going to, instead of having people live here, I'm going to put a couple commercial buildings. And in my head, I'm thinking that they would be like convenience stores or maybe a Tim Hortons or something. Somewhere where I wouldn't switch between the 3s and the 2s and the 4s is an area like this, where I'm only going to zone this side up here and I'm not going to zone down here to help with traffic. I don't zone on my 6-lane roads, but the way that I will vary it up is by doing a mix of high density commercial and low density commercial, and maybe even some office in here. So that's what my zoning will look like. The last tip I will give you about zoning is to use your specialized industry types to create some variety in your industry. Let's create 2 industry zones over here. We have the Lifa comment below industry areas. And we will make Lifacom a farming area, and we will make Ment below a forestry area. And now as we zone these in, using the methods that you have already learned, we will get a variety in our industry buildings as well. I'm going to, as smoothly as possible, go through the city and show you the zoning that I've done. Take a look at where I have left things full and completely zoned. Take a look at where I have spaced them out, where I have mixed them up with zoning types that you can do so, where I have changed the sizing of my zones just to create some variety. Let's unpause the simulation and watch everything zone in. We are hearing people move in and level up everywhere, and how much better does this look? Don't worry about this land, I promise we are getting there very soon. But when you look around and see the way that the buildings have come in via the zoning, it looks like everything was done on purpose. It looks like all of these high-rise buildings were meant to be here. These houses are a little suburb that, again, where everybody has their space and their property. The shopping centers and the office centers have a little bit of variety in them. And I think that this looks so much better, even with just the zoning. And when you come down to the industry, the specialized industry looks great. It helps that there is less pollution being produced here as well, but just to have the variety again, it's always the variety with the zoning for me. And we do have the generic industry over here, so it's not like we have completely left generic industry, right? If you have any questions about why I zoned something a certain way, let me know in a comment below. I promise I will get back to you. Our next tip is all about how to solve this problem here. Sometimes when buildings zone in, they do this wacky thing with the land that they raise up the land, but then the land around them doesn't come in to fill it in. And one of the simplest things you can do is adjust that. If you're not familiar with the landscaping tools, there will be a card in the top right of the screen right now. Click it and watch it after you've watched this video, so that you can get more familiar with how to use them. What I like to do to fix this problem is take the level terrain tool, right click on where the house is, and then left click all around it. And I kind of readjust with each house as I go. So I'm right clicking and then I'm right clicking again and readjusting around the house. That will bring the land around the house up to its level. And you can do the same thing when the house is too sunk in. So I'm going to right click where this house is and I'm going to move the land around it. I like to do this level terrain thing first, kind of everywhere that it's an issue. Is it an issue over here? It is a little bit of an issue over here. I will also do the same thing right here where the road has created a bit of a landscaping debacle. So I'm just raising up the land around the road to be at the same height as the road. And let's fix these houses up as well. And now that we've done that, the second part of this trick is to take the softened terrain. I usually make it the lower brush strength, and I do exactly that. I just soften around it, and if I go too far to where it creates a corner again, I just redo the level terrain, and I'll just do this a little bit around them so it looks less like someone came in and really did what we just did. There will be areas like this where you have the houses back to back, or maybe it's a road back to back kind of thing, and you just can't make the terrain perfect. That's okay. Having a little bit of variety and edge to the terrain is nice, but not the way that it was before. It looked whack. And now it looks less whack. You know what else looks pretty whack in this city? These interchanges. Tip number 4 is to put some effort into your interchanges, even if you're using the stock vanilla ones. Let's tidy this guy up a bit. Now would you look at that? That looks a heck of a lot better than it did before, and I just used the stock vanilla interchange into the same roundabout that we had before, but I decorated it with rocks and trees and a whole bunch of these shrubbery undergrowth things. And placing it tree by tree takes a good while in vanilla, but you can do it. And just imagine this forest coming down this way to make it an even smoother transition, because right now it just goes into the blank map. What a difference this makes. Let's do this interchange next. And there we go. You see the biggest difference is that I haven't used trees in this area because there is all of this pollution gunk happening, right? I don't think it makes sense to use trees when they're just gonna do this and they're gonna look awful. So I've used only rocks, and you can still make it look manicured and like things are there on purpose when you're only using rocks. And of course, these little bush things. Speaking of trees and rocks and trees, guys, guess what number 5 is? Rocks and trees are the main thing that you can decorate your city with in vanilla. Start using them. Let's take a look and see how different and how better we can make this section of our city look with just trees and rocks. Admittedly, zoomed out, it's a little tough with the vanilla settings, but as soon as you zoom in, you can start to see what we've actually done here. Honest to goodness, just using rocks and trees. There really is a lot of potential with the nature assets that you get in this game. I mean, who wouldn't want to walk through this area? I think it looks delightful. Some tips for rock and tree placement. Vary up how you group your trees. You can see here, I have a stronger grouping of the lighter color tree. Here I have a stronger grouping of the darker tree, and here I've got a very good mix between both of them, and you can see through all of the tree placement I've done, I've varied up the way that I group the different tree types. Mix up manicured placement of rocks and trees with natural placement. See, along this 6-lane road, on the top of the road we've got a very manicured tree line. On the bottom of the road we have a very manicured rock line, and then surrounding both of them we've got natural tree placement and natural rock placement, and I think the combination of the two together really looks sharp. Don't be afraid to leave white space or blank space. In this area especially, we do have groupings of trees, but then there is area around them where there's not any tree or rock. It's showing that variety that we've been discussing pretty well this whole episode. Speaking of variety, use it. We've got one of the big giant rocks, we have the kind of medium-sized rocks, the boulders, and then the wee little rocks, all in one screenshot, plus these flat guys that lay on the ground. Speaking of these flat guys, they are a good reminder that some of the rocks can clip into each other, even without mods like Move It or Anarchy. See these flat ones? I can place them underneath these other rocks, and they can clip in. Experiment to see which rocks you can and cannot do this with, and use it to your advantage. Lining a pathway with trees is easy mode for pretty tree placement. I could be saying that's it, those are my 5 tips to get started with detailing and beautifying in vanilla, but wait, there's more. Bonus tip, guys, if you have DLCs, use them. You can have an area like this into this, only using Park Life and the Industries DLC. How much neater and nicer does that look? They both just bring a neatness to their respective builds. Take a look at this normally zoned area and watch it turn into this with the self-sufficient housing and the IT clusters from the Green Cities DLC. These high density self-sufficient buildings are, honest to goodness, my favorite high density buildings, including everything I've seen in the workshop. I love these buildings. And guys, if you have the Park Life DLC, you are laughing. You can take the props that are in the Park Life DLC and you can place them outside of the parks. Remember this path that we put in and we lined the trees with? Well, let's put some benches down. And these are the little details that you can start to add now in vanilla before you start mass downloading mods to fuel your detailing addiction that is about to come. If people wanted to have a stop back here and have some food, they could do so at these tables. You can put bins down and recycling for people to throw out their trash. You can even help out people's gardens using the flowers. This balloon cart from the amusement park can make for a useful prop to put on sidewalks. And you've got a university like this with nothing around it. I think it makes sense to have a place for these guys to sit around and eat. Put down a couple picnic benches, grab the food stalls from the city park, and suddenly your university students are well fed. You know what else would look good in here? Some rocks. You now have 5 kinda +1 things to go back into your cities and try out in vanilla city skylines. Making cities look good as well as function can be something that takes a bit of time and definitely some practice, but there's no better time to start than now. Once you've mastered these 5 things, you might think, where do I go from here? 2 things. If you're on PC, install the Move It mod. Regardless, take a look at Google Maps, find your hometown, find a small section of the town that you like the way that it looks, and then try to recreate it in City Skylines as best as you can with the tools that you have available, be it vanilla or modded, and that will get you used to placing things a certain way to look realistic or look good. From there, just go nuts. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want more City Skylines how-tos and content, subscribe and click on the video and the card on the screen to learn 11 things about City Skylines that you might not know. And guys, I will catch you next time.